The twin suns were setting behind the red mountains when a strange figure stepped into the holy grounds of Temple Araksa. He was a human. He wore long dark robes that dragged behind him in the sand. His face was calm, unreadable. He said nothing. He only walked. The alien guards at the temple gates frowned. "Another outsider?" one whispered. "He'll be gone before night," said the other. "No outsider lasts here." Temple Araksa was sacred. For over 10,000 years it belonged only to the Zalarian ancient alien race known for their glowing blue skin and long silver horns. No other species was allowed to stay inside. Many had tried. Most were chased out. Some never left, because they were never seen again. But this human didn't beg. He didn't ask to enter. He simply stopped at the gate and waited. High Priestess. Vornix, tall and proud, with golden robes and shining tattoos, stepped forward. "What does a silent monkey from Earth want in our temple?" she asked with a smirk. The human slowly lifted his head. "I seek silence," he said softly. His voice was deep, quiet, but it echoed through the wide courtyard. That answer confused them. "Silence?" the priestess asked. "You've come? All the way across galaxies? To sit quietly?" The human nodded once. "That is all I require." Some of the younger priests laughed. One threw a pebble at the man. It hit his shoulder and bounced off. He didn't move. "Let him in," the priestess finally said, more amused than threatened. "Let him see how long he lasts." That night, the human was given a small corner near the outer wall of the temple. He sat cross-legged, facing an old statue of a forgotten god. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He didn't blink for hours. A young alien girl named Vexa, a low-ranking acolyte, was watching from behind the tall columns. She was no older than 20 cycles, curious and quiet. Something about the man didn't feel normal. The way he breathed, the way the air around him stayed still, like time itself was afraid to move too fast near him. When the night bell rang, all the priests went to rest. All except him. Vexa returned secretly near midnight. She couldn't help herself. She had to see what he was doing. She peeked around the corner and gasped. He was glowing, not brightly, not like the temple's blue flames, but a soft white shimmer surrounded his body. His eyes were closed, but strange symbols floated above his hands, written in a language she had never seen. And then the temple began to shake. Not an earthquake, not thunder, but a deep quiet, vibration like a heartbeat inside the stone walls. Suddenly, the statue behind him began to weep. Red tears leaked from the ancient idol's stone eyes, not water, blood. The sacred flames in the main altar flared up. Pan turned blue to black. Screams came from the sleeping chambers. A priestess ran out, shouting that the high priestess Vornix had fallen. She was twisting in her bed, shouting things in languages no one had spoken in centuries. Vexa backed away, shaking. Her eyes locked on the human dot. He slowly opened his. They glowed. Not white, not red, but silver like mirrors that reflected the soul. She ran. She didn't even look back. But deep inside, she knew something had entered Temple Araksa that night. Something ancient. Something terrifying, and it wore the face of a human. By morning, the temple was in chaos. The high priestess remained unconscious, whispering names of long-dead gods. 3 statues were found cracked. The sacred pool had turned cloudy. The priests blamed the human, but he remained silent, sitting, watching, waiting. The elders met behind locked doors. "What is he?" one asked. "A false prophet," said another. "Or worse," muttered the oldest, "a purifier." None dared confront him directly, but Vexa knew this was only the beginning. The human hadn't even started yet. By the next sunset, fear had replaced faith in Temple Araksa. Priests no longer walked with pride. They whispered now in corners, behind columns. In half-lit rooms with closed curtains, the name on everyone's lips wasn't of any god. It was the human. They stopped calling him monkey or outsider now. They called him the unmoved one. The high priestess still hadn't woken up. She lay on a golden bed, eyes open but staring, lips muttering ancient curses. Her tattoos had faded to gray. She no longer looked wholly just broken. 3 of the highest priest warriors had tried to cleanse the human at sunrise. They performed the rite of fire, chanting battle songs, raising glowing blades. He didn't fight back. He simply looked at them, manned the fire, and their hands froze. Literally froze. The flames turned to glass and shattered. Their robes caught frost. One dropped to his knees, crying, claiming he saw his own death in the human's eyes. And still, the human said nothing, just sat, just breathed. Vexa could hardly sleep that night. Something inside her was pulling her toward him. Not desire, not curiosity. It was something deeper, something older. She waited until midnight, then crept through the empty halls with bare feet, past the echoing silence, to the human's corner near the weeping statue. He was still sitting there, but this time, the air around him was moving, not wind, not heat. The dust itself had lifted, floating in slow spirals above his head. Tiny lights like stars blinked inside the swirl just for a moment. Symbols appeared again, glowing, spinning, changing. But this time, Vexa recognized one. Her eyes widened. It was the seal of the void, a symbol from forbidden scrolls. Only the dead spoke of it. And those who did usually screamed before silence took them. And then he opened his eyes. Vexa gasped. His eyes weren't silver anymore. They were black, with pinpoints of galaxies inside. He turned his head toward her and spoke. I know why you came. Vexa froze. Her mouth went dry. You feel the rot, he said calmly. You feel it under the stones. She nodded slowly. Her knees were shaking. There's something under this temple, she whispered. Something, moving. He looked back toward the statue. They buried gods here, he said, but not to honor them, to trap them. The next morning, a loud cracking sound woke the city. One of the main temple towers had split right down. The middle, its top half collapsed into dust, revealing a hidden stairwell going deep underground. The elders panicked. The ancient maps showed nothing like it. The stairwell was not carved by hands. It was grown at stone edges, pulsing slightly like veins. The priests argued loudly. Some wanted to close the stairs forever. Others believed this was part of a prophecy. But the human? It already started. Walking down, and no one stopped him, not even the guards. The whispers grew louder. Maybe he's a deathbringer. No, he's a cleanser. Or a punishment for our pride. What if he was sent by the true gods? By dusk, half the temple refused to speak at all. The other half began drawing his face in secret in scrolls. On walls, on skin, Vexa stood alone in the library that evening, pulling old records, trying to find any story, any prophecy that mentioned a human like him. She found it, buried deep in a broken tablet. When silence walks and symbols glow, the gods below will twist and bow. A man from ashes, not of stars, will break the lock and show their scars. She dropped the tablet in shock. That night, she waited at the top of the secret stairwell. She knew she would follow him. She had no choice now. She whispered into the dark tunnel. Who are you really? His voice echoed back softly from the deep. I am the last priest of a forgotten war. The temple floor was cold. Vex's footsteps echoed as she descended the ancient stairwell. The stone under her bare feet felt alive, warm, and pulsing like it had a heartbeat. And the deeper she went, the more the air changed. It was no longer dry, it felt. Thick, heavy, like invisible hands were brushing against her skin. Ahead, the human priest walked in silence. His robe didn't sway. His steps made no sound. It was like the dark itself moved out of his way. They reached a vast underground hala, a secret place no alien had entered in 10,000 years. In the center of the chamber stood a massive black door, taller than any temple gate above, sealed. With glowing chains and ancient alien runes that danced like fireflies, the air buzzed with power. Bones, yes. Bones of priests lay piled near the door's base. Many had tried to open it. All had failed. Some had died just by touching it. Do you know what's behind it? Vexa whispered. The human placed his hand on the chained lock. He didn't chant. He didn't shout. He simply pressed his palm against the door, and it sighed open, like a living thing letting go of a long breath. The moment it opened, shockwave hit the city above. Temples cracked. The skies turned red. Birds stopped flying. The sacred fountains turned black. And across the planet, statues of old gods shivered. Inside the chamber, a dark wind spilled out. It carried voices, thousands of voices, screaming, whispering, laughing. Vexa covered her ears. The sound wasn't loud, but it stabbed her mind. Tears ran down her cheeks. But the human? He stepped through the door without blinking. The room beyond was not made by any alien hand. It was a void, space of swirling stars, floating platforms, broken chains, and suspended fragments of temples and planets. And at the center was something huge, bound in silver light. It looked like a god but twisted, decaying. Its body was part stone, part metal, part shadow. And it had a dozen faces, each screaming in a different tone. It opened its glowing eyes and saw the human. For the first time in thousands of years, the creature recoiled in fear. You, it hissed. You shouldn't exist. Shh. The human didn't speak. He lifted one hand and the light around the god shrank, binding it tighter. The monster roared. Chains snapped and reformed. The entire chamber shook. Vexa watched from the doorway, unable to move. The god begged now, please don't send me back, not again. But the priest's voice finally broke the silence. Calm, sharp. You fed on their fear. You demanded blood. You whispered lies, called it worship. He took one step forward. They forgot what real faith looks like. I'm here to remind them. Back in the city, the alien priests began to scream. Some fell to their knees. Some ran into the desert. Tearing off their robes, they saw visions of all their rituals, all their holy laws, and how they were designed not for peace, but to feed the chained god. The truth was out, and it was burning their minds. In the chamber, the priest raised both hands. Light flowed from his body like a river pure, white, endless. The chained god shrieked. Its form began to crumble. Its faces turned to dust. Its body cracked apart and scattered into the stars. And then silence. Real silence. Not empty.
Ow.
But peaceful. Vexa stepped forward slowly. Is it gone? The priest turned toward her, pale but still standing. For now, he said, others like it remain, across other worlds. Vexa stared at him, but who are you? She asked again. No human, no one, should have this power. He looked past her, toward the dark hallway. I'm not here to be worshipped, he said. I'm here to clean the rot. One temple at a time. And he walked past her, heading back up to the light. That night, Vexa stood at the broken temple. Gates, the stars above seemed brighter. The silence felt softer. But one question remained in every mind across the city. Who really sent the human? A god? A curse? Or something far older than both? The sacred horns were blown at dawn. Their echo bounced across the city of Zelarath like a warning bell. Every alien, young, old priest, or warrior, felt it deep in their bones. The council of elders had gathered, not for worship, not for ceremony, but for judgment, and their target was the human priest. Inside the grand dome of truth, the 12 alien elders stood in a circle. Their horns were long and twisted, dyed with the ink of old blood. Their eyes glowed faintly. They wore robes made from the skins of ancient beasts that no longer existed. Elder Corrin slammed his staff on the floor. This human has broken the ancient seal. He opened what was never meant to be touched. Elder Lero hissed. He did what? None of us could. That frightens me. He did not destroy us, said Elder Maru, the only female on the council. He destroyed something we feared, but worshipped anyway. Oh, blasphemy, Corrin barked. You defend a creature that walks like a ghost and commands powers older than gods? The council roared in disagreement. Some wanted the human banished, some wanted him studied, but most wanted him executed. Meanwhile, the human priest sat under the cracked statue of Oroxa. He had not moved in hours, not since returning from the forbidden chamber. Around him, the sky had changed. The red clouds had vanished. Rain had fallen for the first time in 100 years. The people were afraid, but they were watching him, some from windows, some from shadows, and some began secretly leaving him gifts, flowers, food, even ancient scrolls they didn't understand. They didn't know what he was, but they knew he had saved them. Vexa stood outside the grand dome, eavesdropping. Her heart pounded. She had followed the human into the depths. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. He hadn't attacked anyone. He hadn't asked for worship. He had just revealed the rot. But the elders didn't want truth. They wanted control. And now they wanted blood. The decision was made before the sun reached its peak. The priest would be arrested and brought before the council at dusk. A ritual execution would follow. But when the guards arrived to seize him, their weapons melted in their hands. Not burned, not broken. Melted like the metal itself no longer obeyed their command. One guard screamed as his armor turned to steam. Another fell unconscious before touching the human's robe. And still, the priest said nothing. He did not move. He did not fight. He only opened his eyes once. The guards ran. Vexa raced into the council chamber. "You can't do this," she shouted, "Elder." Corin narrowed his glowing eyes. "You've been touched by the heretic's whispers, girl." "I saw the truth," she yelled. "I saw the chained god. You all knew what was under this temple. You feared it, but you fed it." Silence. She pointed toward them, trembling. "Is that why you hate him? 'Cause he broke what you couldn't?" "Control?" Elder Lero stood slowly. "You're no longer a priestess, Vexa. You are now a heretic." Guards moved toward her. But before they could touch, her every flame in the room turned cold. A wind blew in from nowhere. The torches flickered and then died, and a voice echoed from behind the walls. "Judgment works both ways." The ceiling above the council cracked. Stone rained down. Light beamed in from above. And floating in that light was the human. He did not fly. He simply stood in the air as if gravity had lost interest in him. He looked down at the 12 elders. "Your rule was built on lies, on chained monsters, on blind obedience." His voice was not loud, but it echoed in every mind. "You claim to speak for the gods, but I have walked where they sleep. You are nothing but caretakers of cages." Elder Corin screamed and threw his staff at the light. It shattered. Mid-dash-air, the priest slowly floated down. He stepped forward and placed a single finger on the marble floor. A seal of light spread from his hand, covering the entire chamber. Symbols rose from the ground, wrapping around each elder. They gasped. They clutched their heads. They saw visions, the screams of past sacrifices, the faces of children taken in the name of faith. The dark truths buried under stone and time, one by one. They fell to their knees, not dead, not cursed, but exposed. The priest turned away. "The temple is yours now," he said to Vexa. "But what are you going to do?" she asked. He looked toward the stars. "There are other temples, other cages." Walked into the light pouring through the broken roof and vanished. The temple Araxa stood in shocked silence. For the first time in its long history, there were no chants, no incense smoke, no elders giving orders. They had all been stripped of power, not by a war, not by a rebellion, but by a single silent human, priest, who now was gone. Vexa stood alone beneath the cracked dome where he had last vanished. The floor still glowed faintly where he had drawn the seal of truth. The symbols had cooled, but she could still feel their warmth beneath her feet, like whispers hidden in stone. All around her, the remaining priests stared from a distance. Some feared her. Others followed her, but none of them knew what she now carried, the truth, and it was breaking her that night. She went to the sacred mirror chamber. It was forbidden to enter alone. The room held a crystal mirror that showed a person not there, Reflection. But their true self. Priests were trained for years before facing it. Vexa stepped in with no training, no guide, only pain. She stood in front of the mirror. Breathing heavily, the image that stared back wasn't her body. It was a younger version of herself, scared, small, ignored, watching her teachers sacrifice animals and whisper praises to hungry gods. She never understood. Then the mirror changed. She saw herself as she was now, and behind her stood the human priest. She turned quickly. No one was there, just the reflection, and it spoke. "You carry more than memory," the reflection whispered. "You carry the voice of a broken people and their chance to rebuild." Vex dropped to her knees. "I don't know how," she whispered. "They think I'm strong, but I'm terrified. Still don't know who he was, what he wanted." The mirror pulsed with a strange light. "You already know," reflection said gently. Suddenly, a scroll slid from the wall behind her. It was not there before. She opened it. It wasn't written in any language of the temple, but somehow she understood every word. It was his writing, a letter, a warning, a guide. "Vexa, if you're reading this, I'm no longer among you. Not in form, but I left something behind. Not a prophecy, not a weapon, a question. What will you build in the silence that remains?" Faith, when built on fear, becomes poison, but faith, born from truth, becomes light. "You ask me who I am not your enemy, and what comes after the gods are gone. Be brave enough to not become what I destroyed." Vexa felt her chest tighten. Tears ran freely now. She wasn't crying from fear. She was crying from the weight of what he had handed her. Responsibility. The next day, she gathered the remaining priests and acolytes in the temple courtyard. She stepped forward not as a priestess, but as a survivor. She held up the scroll. This is what he left behind. Not gold, not relics, but truth. Some began to whisper. One elder tried to interrupt, but Vexa raised her hand. "We spent thousands of years feeding lies to the stars," she said, voice steady. "Now we must ask forgiveness from our own people." As she spoke, the temple walls began to glow faintly again. No longer with black fire, no longer with fear, but with warm, golden light, and the air felt clean for the first time in centuries. Later that night, Vexa stood alone in the garden where she once confronted the human priest. She whispered into the wind, "I think I finally understand who you were." Above her, a shooting star streaked silently across the sky, and for a brief second, in the shadow of a tree, she saw him, the human priest, smiling, nodding once, then gone. The sky was too quiet. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Vexa stood on the temple balcony, her heart pounding. It had been 6 days since the human priest disappeared. 6 days since the council fell. 6 days since she began rebuilding. The faith not on blood, but truth. But tonight, something was wrong. The winds were too still. The birds had gone silent. And the moon above had turned a shade of deep crimson. Then came the scream. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was ancient, the kind of scream that came from something buried too long, and waking up hungry. A temple bell cracked open as fire exploded from the east mountain. Molten rocks shot into the sky. Ash turned daylight to night, across the city. The ground shook violently. Buildings crumbled. Priests ran through the streets shouting prayers that no longer held power. From the crack in the mountain, a shape began to rise, being wrapped in lava and bone. With wings of smoke and a body that screamed with every step, it wasn't the chained god the priest had destroyed. No, this was something worse, something that had fed off the chained god, itself for eons. Now, it was freoned. It wanted revenge. Vexa ran down the temple stairs as alien civilians screamed below. Children clung to their mothers. Warriors tried forming defense lines, but their weapons melted in their hands, just like before, only this time. The human priest was gone, and without him, they had nothing. "Why now?" Vexa cried as she watched the fire monster rip through the old city walls. "We already broke the chains." An old priest, crawling from the rubble, looked up at her. With broken eyes, we broke the chain, but didn't bury the root. In that moment, Vexa felt something in her palm, a burning heat. She looked down. The scroll the human had left her was glowing on its own. She opened it. Line had appeared. When fire rises, do not run. Stand in silence and speak only what is true. The fire beast roared into the sky. Flames poured from its mouth. Buildings turned to ash in seconds. The people screamed. They began running from the city toward the desert, where death waited in the cold night. Vexa stood at the heart of the temple ruins, scroll in hand, her body shaking. She stepped forward. Just a girl, no armor, no weapons. Only her voice, and she whispered, "I am not afraid of you." The beast turned. Its body pulsed with heat. Its steps cracked the stone. It towered over her like a mountain with teeth. But Vexa didn't move. She closed her eyes. Spoke again. "You are not a god." The wind around her exploded. A whirlwind of fire rose up, but did not touch her. Instead, it froze midair. Locked in place like fire trapped in glass, and from above a beam of light fell like a sword. The fire shattered, and from the center of the light he returned. The human priest stood again, not walking, not floating, descending, with robes now glowing white and golden. The fire beast roared in fury. The priest raised one hand. "I told you not to follow me," and with a single word, "unbind." The fire beast's body cracked apart, splitting into thousands of burning fragments that flew into the sky like stars. Then silenced again. The people slowly emerged. The skies began to clear. The stars blinked softly again, and Vexa looked up at him. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left," he replied. "But how?" She asked. He smiled, tired. "You spoke the truth. It called me." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are ready now," he said. "For what?" she asked. He looked over the temple, over the people who knelt in awe to lead them, into a world without chains. And just like that, he was gone. Not in fire, not in light, just a blink of silence. The sun rose quietly over Exla. Wrath, no fire, no smoke. Just soft golden light falling on a city once buried in shadow. The old temple Araxa was now a ruin, cracked walls, broken spires, and melted statues of forgotten gods. Where once stood a symbol of fear and control, there was only silence, and yet that silence felt alive. VXA stood barefoot in the center of the old courtyard, where the priest had disappeared for the second and final dash time. In her hands, she held his scroll. The symbols were now dim, as if resting. She had read it 1,000 times. But this morning a new line had appeared. Truth is not what is given. It is what is carried. If you still hear my voice, it means the silence is finally yours. Smiled softly. He was truly gone. But she was not alone. The city had begun to rebuild, but not the way it once was. Gone were the banners of gods. Gone were the loud chants that fed empty heavens. Gone were the elite elders who sat above the people now. In the open square where the beast once roared, the people themselves gathered. No one led the prayers. No one forced silence. But when Vexa walked to the center, they listened. She stood atop a stone block once part of the temple. Wallen spoke. "I was a child of the temple. I was told to obey, to fear, to stay silent." She paused, voice steady. "But one man came and reminded us what silence really means." She raised the scroll. "He did not destroy our gods. He unmasked them." She looked around at the crowd, aliens of every caste, warriors and weavers, children and elders. No more chains, no more hidden truths. Today, we build something new. For gods who demand fear, but for people who deserve peace. The crowd didn't cheer. They breathed. Some cried. Some simply nodded. Placing hands over hearts, one by one they stepped forward, offering small things, a broken blade, faded prayer stone, a melted mask worn by a false priest. Each item was laid at her feet, not as sacrifice, but as farewell to the old world, to the lies, to the pain. That evening, as the twin suns sank below the horizon, the first stones of the new temple were placed, but this time it would not reach for the sky. It would sit close to the earth. To the stars above, no roof, no walls, only truth. Vexa didn't wear robes of gold. She wore plain cloth, dyed with ash and water. She called herself not high priestess, but guardian of silence. There were no rituals, just stories. The people gathered in circles and shared what they had once been too afraid to say, and when they wept, no one stopped them. That night, Vexa sat alone in the garden, now overgrown but alive. She closed her eyes, and in the wind, she heard it again, not words, not breath, but his silence, across the galaxy. Rumors spread of a city where a human priest came and shattered the gods, of a girl who faced fire without flinching, of a place where belief was no longer about power but healing. Pilgrims came. Some walked for months. Others crawled, but none were turned away. They weren't looking for miracles, they were looking for truth. Vexa once asked the human what he was. She never got a straight answer. But now, as she stood among thousands and watched their faces light up not from a god's blessing, but from each other, she understood. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a savior. He was a reminder that even in a galaxy of gods, sometimes it takes a human to show what faith really means.